Hey friends, welcome to our exclusive weekly YouTube chat. Welcome back to the many who've been with us week in, week out for many months now. Welcome to everyone joining us for the first time. Hey, tell your friends about this. Let them join. I know you think the more people, the less time for your questions, but hey, we normally get to about one question per person unless folks are giving, and then we try to be responsive to that as well. But if you're brand new, welcome. So glad to have you here. Anything is kosher. Anything you want to ask me about, as long as it ties in with some area of expertise or knowledge that we have. If it's something I have no clue about, no reason to ask me. It's just like a coin flip, if I'll give you the right answer or the wrong answer. So any way I could be of help, great. If you differ with me, if you've heard something you want to clarify, by all means, go ahead and ask. I'm not sensitive. You won't hurt my feelings. To make sure we see your question, put it at the beginning at AskDrBrown, at AskDrBrown. That way it stands out from the chat back and forth. And if you're giving to support our work, which we really do appreciate, there's a $ at the bottom of the chat box. If you have a question, ask it when you give, because that jumps up to the top of the page and it's easier for our team to spot that. Okay, we start with another gift from our friends at Logos Research. Thank you. Thoughts on Francis Schaeffer's concept of L'Abri, where he wanted it to be a manifestation of the truth of Christianity and therefore never asked for money, but instead just prayed and God met his needs. That's wonderful if the Lord lays that on your heart, or if that's your own conviction. It's wonderful, it's supernatural, it's faith building, but it has to be either your own conviction or something that God lays on your heart. I always tell people that your conviction, your ethical conviction, and your faith have to meet. Meaning, if you say, well, we're going to pastor church, but I'm never going to talk about money, I'm never going to ask for money, okay, then you have to have sufficient faith for that. Otherwise, the funds just don't come in automatically. George Mueller set that as an example. You read his journal, you read his diaries of prayer. It was extraordinary. And he said, hey, it's not just me. God is calling me to do this to be an example for others. There are people, if you read about Brother Andrew and the school that he went to, the ministry school, they taught the students certain faith principles, and they would send them out on trips without any money, and they would have to believe God for funds, and they couldn't ask for funds. And it was always amazing to them to see how God works. So it was faith and a certain ethic meeting. Paul actively received offerings in his letters, said, hey, when I come, I want you to give. He would support the poor believers in Jerusalem in particular. We know that God told Moses to ask the people for materials to build the tabernacle. So there's nothing wrong with asking. But if you have a faith ethic to not ask at all, wonderful. And what we've tried to do in our ministry is take the vast majority of material and make it available for free online. Obviously not the books that I've written, but the vast majority of our videos, and of course our articles we just put out for free. They're not behind firewalls, the vast majority. And that's by faith. We believe that people will give and support our work, and we give them channels to do so. One more from Logos Research. Thanks. A quick follow-up to that. He never anticipated for others to follow his model. He felt compelled to rely on the Spirit. Is that practical today? Again, it's all a matter of your own faith and relationship with God. The givingest churches that I know in America, the churches that receive the highest percentage per capita of larger churches, they don't talk about money. If you go there on a Sunday, they will just say, if you're giving, here's how to give. And you can get online and give, or there are boxes in the back. But in other words, they don't receive offerings. And that's how God has blessed them and anointed them, and they have grace to do that. So it's as practical as your faith is in that regard. Benny, thank you for your gift. Why did Jesus trust John with Mary, Miriam, when she had 4 other sons? Were his brothers present at his crucifixion? We don't know that they were present. Unless the Gospels say they were there, we don't know. And we know that for some, it was a coming to realization of who he actually was. So there could have also just been the closeness that Jesus experienced with John in terms of a true friend, that he felt that his mother would be best in her hands. We don't know all the details of that, but the only ones we know that were at the cross are the ones that it says were at the cross. Now, all the apostles had to be eyewitnesses, but none of the Lord's direct family members were eyewitnesses aside from his mother. In other words, his brothers or sisters were not recorded as being eyewitnesses. And James, his brother, was not an eyewitness that we know of. He may have been, but we don't know that. Marcelino, thank you for your gift. I missed your debates. Would you do another Islamic debate? And do you think free transmission or controlled transmission of a text is more reliable? Well, we started the debate series. I did 8 debates for That's Debatable. The first 6 are available on Awakening TV. Now, they're just 30 minutes. It's a very lively format. And the last one to air will be with an Islamic scholar about the Bible or the New Testament, which is more reliable. So that information, if you go to AWKNG, Awakening TV, it is a subscription network, but it's not expensive. There's a ton of good programming, and they were able to fund the production of these debates, and I look forward to doing many more. I've done other debates online recently, in recent months, with an apostate, calls himself the apostate prophet, former Muslim, a few others on this very YouTube channel. Just search on AskDrBrown for debates. And then next week, we're going to do special programming every day on the Line of Fire, Monday through Thursday of next week. We are going to be playing excerpts of past debates. TC, thank you for your gift. You are very welcome in response to your thank you. Crying. I'm sorry. The question of controlled transmission or free transmission, if the control is ethical and honest, that's always best. In other words, if there are people who are God-fearing, if you're talking about a religious text, and consider it sacred, then that very controlled, very careful copying with guidelines, with rules, with checks, with counter-checks is of tremendous, tremendous value, as opposed to just random copying. The value of free copies is if you have enough of them and compare them, you can then help get back to an original text. And the potential problem with controlled text is if you have people with a religious agenda. But otherwise, good scribal technique is better than bad scribal technique. Okay, crying. How should an expose video about a false teacher be done biblically without bad motives? If that's your desire to do this, you feel that someone's teaching is false and dangerous, you're going to expose it publicly, I would first say, okay, make sure God's calling you to. Secondly, do you have the credentials that you should be listened to ask that question? If not, you may want to interview people who have credentials just for the sake of credibility. I would also reach out to this person and say, I plan to address X, Y, Z. These are my positions, why I believe you're wrong. Would you like to interact? They may interact with you. They may not. But at least you've given it that effort before going public with a whole expose video. And then don't go beyond the simple evidence. Don't judge why the person does what they do. Don't do things in a way that you demonize a human being that you don't know. Rather say, so-and-so teaches thus and such. Look, there are lots of videos attacking me online. Every so often I'll glance at them, but otherwise I don't bother to. And in the vast majority of cases, the people never reach out to interact personally or to ask for an interview or anything like that. And if they feel to expose whatever, they think something is error or whatever. But the few times I've looked at them, I mean, the presentations are laughable. The judgments, the false statements, the inaccurate statements, and things like that. And I'm thinking, I want to take issue, at least do it the right way, Brown is this, Brown is that. It's like, you got to be kidding me. If you want to differ with something I believe, have at it. Day and night, have at it. People do. I'm confident in what I believe, being scriptural, being sound. But if you're going to do that, just deal with the actual issues. So-and-so teaches thus and such. Let's examine it scripturally. Let's see. And make sure you're doing it honestly. Don't take a snippet. Make sure you listen to the statements in context. Logos Research. All right, thank you for another gift. Love the chat opportunity. I will spread the word. Last question today. It seems that the proof of Christianity has never been greater, so why are so many turning away or worse yet, fighting against it? Because in certain ways, the attack on the faith has never been greater, at least in my lifetime. The new atheists and their influence and their attacks on God opened up a can of worms in many ways for people to think thoughts they wouldn't have thought before without proper guidance and information. If you just start attacking the authority of Scripture or the God of the Bible, and now you have to defend like the slaughter of the Canaanites or different things in the Bible that seem difficult to understand, that can alienate people. The sexual revolution and the solidarity with the gay agenda has turned people away from the faith. The ubiquity of sinful temptation, it's so easy to pull people away and pull them down, and that damages faith. It's just a challenging time. And many people believe based on evidence, but many more believe based on experience. And when people are having bad experiences, when they haven't had their own encounter with God, when the church has been hypocritical, scandals, it's been a perfect storm. My book, Has God Failed You?, lays out some of that perfect storm, and then by God's grace seeks to address the issues. So if you've not read it, highly recommend Has God Failed You? Benny, thanks again. Why did Jesus ask Peter if he loved him 3 times if he already knew? The same reason that God often asks questions is to draw things out of us and to teach us. Why did he ask Adam, what happened? Did you eat of the tree? Of course he knew they ate of the tree. Why did he ask Cain, where's your brother Abel? Of course he knew where he was. So in Genesis 3 and Genesis 4. So often God asks us questions to reveal what's going on in us, to reveal an attitude, to bring something to the surface. Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. And this way, Jesus reinstates Peter 3 times, but really probing. Do you really love? Yeah, Lord, I do. Feed my sheep. You really love me? I do. Feed my sheep. And then, of course, the last time the word changes that's being used in Greek for no is that for love. Is that significant or is that just stylistic? There's debate about that. But it's a threefold restoration, and it's a way of saying to Peter, okay, you denied me 3 times. You love me yet? You sure you love me yet? Are you really sure you love me? That's how I'd understand it. Okay, let's see where are we going next. Dumbaklang, thank you for your gift. Appreciate it. Dr. Brown, think that using protection during intimacy is a great sin, but I heard many preachers saying that it's not. I'm confused. Please help me. So first, you and your wife need to do what you can do before God with faith. In other words, if you both feel that using protection is sinful and wrong in God's sight, then you can't use protection. On the flip side, you have to trust God to open and close the womb accordingly if you are together on a regular basis. So again, your faith and your ethic have to meet. Now, the argument can be made that contraception as we have it today is largely the result of sexual revolution, or before that, before the birth control pill with condoms, that there were people that brought them in totally against our American culture, and that the right position is God opens the womb and closes the womb. You could make that argument, but I don't know that that's a biblically based argument necessarily. In other words, there were various means that people had to abstain in certain ways or to not fully engage so as to not have children at a certain point, or maybe the wife had a health condition and they were concerned about whether she'd be able to have a baby or not. So I don't see anything scripturally that says that protection is sinful and wrong. So in my understanding of Scripture, it's not sinful or wrong, but I encourage you and your wife to go before the Lord and say, Lord, we want whatever you want, and then to do what you do in faith. Don't be oppressed by other thoughts in either direction. A firecracker, what is the difference between a willful sin and other sin? What does it mean there is a sin not unto death? So you might say one day, I know this is wrong. I don't care. I'm going to do it. I know I should not lash out at this person. I know it's wrong. I know God's calling me to forgive them, but I don't care. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. I'm going to tell them what a jerk they are, and call them all kinds of names because I want to get it out. That'd be a willful sin. A sin that would be less willful would be that person provokes you and you're trying to be gracious. You're trying to, finally it's like, yeah, you get mad. You don't want to. The whole time you're saying, oh God, forgive me. So there's a difference. There's one thing which is yielding in weakness. The other is acting in wickedness. As to what the Bible means when it talks about sin unto death in 1 John 5, it's really debated by scholars, and we're not sure. Does it mean the unpardonable sin of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, where a line is crossed and no one can come back from that? Does it mean a sin that will bring physical death, and therefore that will be the result of that sin and the person has set their course? Personally, I'm not sure. Even though it's an important text, I remain unsure of exactly what John meant. Shackles. From your own perspective, who are the elect? Are they a nameless, faceless group of people? God has chosen everyone who puts his or her trust in Jesus to be his forever. So he has chosen a people in Jesus, every one of whom he foreknows by their face, by every detail about us, right? So he knows us in advance, but he does not choose us outside of Christ in advance. In Messiah, he has chosen for himself a people. So the elect are all those who put their trust in Jesus. We're talking about the New Testament elect. The Old Testament elect would be Israel, but then those within Israel that believed and others outside of Israel that believed, they would be part of the elect. So God has chosen a people in the Messiah. All those that put their trust in Messiah for salvation are part of the elect. So it may be nameless and faceless to us in that we don't know everyone, but everyone known by name to God. Jake, why do people think Luther held to antinomianism when he actually refuted it in his writings? Well, because of his statements like to sin boldly and his attack on law. So he said enough things that could easily give that impression. And because he fought against the legalism and the fear-based religion that he came out of, you could get that impression potentially. J. Plo, how do you determine how big your meal should be to avoid gluttony? Well, that's an interesting question in terms of just to answer in an arbitrary way, right? Because I'm not a nutritionist that can give you a scientific explanation. First, I would say, are you addicted to any foods? Are you addicted to any foods? If you are, you want to break those addictions. I mean, unhealthy addictions. Not like, man, I got to have my apple or my grapes every day or my blueberries every day or my salad every day. That's not an addiction like a physical addiction where you go through withdrawal. But if you're addicted to any foods, like I was to chocolate and others, things, or breads and other stuff, you need to break those addictions. So you need to be free. That's the first thing. Make it your habit to have no habits, as someone once said, in terms of negative, destructive habits. The second thing is, are you at your ideal weight? And your ideal weight is probably lower than you think it should be. If you're not at your ideal weight, then you're either eating things you shouldn't be eating or eating too much of things. So then you need to find out, okay, what's my ideal weight? And then how much should I be eating every day to maintain that? And then if you eat that amount every day, you will end up getting to that weight. You will lose the necessary weight along the way and then sustain it and maintain it. The other thing is, do you eat and you feel stuffed? That should never happen. When I finish my salad, when I get home tonight and take out my 4-quart bowl and throw in 5+ ounces of mixed greens and then cut up a cucumber and a red pepper, throw in a lot of onions and a lot of tomatoes and a sprinkling of organic raw sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, and then put in a 1.5 cups of organic unsalted beans and then put dressing on it and eat that. It'll take me a half hour to 40 minutes to eat it. When I'm done, I'm satisfied and I'm not stuffed at all. I'm not full, but I'm satisfied. So those are some things that I would say could be useful guidelines for you. Victory in Jesus. Do you ever get tired of answering questions? Thanks for all you do. Actually, no. I don't get tired of answering questions. I may run out of time or have other things I need to do. Hang on. When I get unsolicited questions flooding into my Facebook page or Facebook Messenger or things like that, I don't have time to answer all the questions. And in that sense, yes, I would get tired. But otherwise, to sit around and if I'm with a group of people or this, answering questions, no, it's a joy. Thank you. JR, what do you think about Christians who celebrate Halloween? I don't agree with it. I don't know why they would do it. You just tell your kids, hey, we don't do this. Lots of things the world does that we don't do. Now, I have no problem with, you asked my opinion, right? So I'm not God, this is my opinion on this. Because of Halloween being what it is and what it celebrates, and look at the movies that play during Halloween and the satanic aspects. You talk to former Satanists and they'll tell you how big that time of the year is for them, Halloween. I remember just fasting once on a Halloween thinking, what's with all the demonic opposition I'm feeling? I thought, oh, it's Halloween, there's something in the air. And I believe that was accurate, what I was sensing. But in point of fact, the violence, the darkness, all of that is why would we want to participate in that? So if you have a harvest festival at your church and you have people come for fun, so you're not known as the church that's against everything and your kids grow up, well, you're just against everything. No, we're just against bad things. So I was part of a church once where you show up as historical characters in the church. Or just some other religious figure. I came as an Orthodox rabbi, and we were just having fun in terms of dressing up certain ways, obviously not meaning to offend in any way. So, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And you'd say, well, look, they're doing what they're doing. We're having fun, or we're going to use it for outreach. But to participate in itself, I would never do it. But I'm not going to condemn Christians who do. Just pray for them. God, bring them into the fullness of your love, your truth, your holy standards for them and their family, and leave it to the Lord to deal with them. Let's see. Grand Gauge, which Bible translations do you prefer? Which one is closest to the Greek? So if you're talking about New Testament, there is no such thing as which one is closest to the Greek. It's a matter of opinion. So, the NASB, now the NASB 2020, is well known for trying to adhere to the feel of Greek grammar, but that doesn't make the English as good. So the ESV tried to do that, but with a little bit smoother English. The NIV is smoother English yet. But any of, ISV. So if you're looking at NASB, ESV, NIV, ISV, CSB, any of these are going to be reliable if you're used more to the King James tradition, the New King James, or the MEV. And then if you want the one, though, that has tremendous amount of study notes, then you get the NET. And just go online to NET Bible, New English Translation, netbible.org, and you have thousands of translation notes that explain things well. Alexander, exercise regularly for my mental health. How can I do this to God's glory and without it becoming an idol? I know it benefits me in many ways, but I want to make sure I'm not idolizing it. Just say, Lord, this is for you. This is, before you do it every day, Lord, I commit my body, my mind, everything in me to you. I pray you help me to glorify you and be the best that I can be. Exercising physically is supposed to help with long-term mental well-being, mental health, just as eating healthily contributes to that. So you're doing it as a steward. You pray for that, and then you don't boast about it. Like I'll talk about exercising. I'm boasting about it because you put me like in CrossFit with top guys in their 20s, I'm going to, get crushed quickly. But as a guy that's this age, to say, hey, I'm still going for it, pushing, I do that to encourage others, right? That's my motivation for doing it. It's not like I'm boasting, look at me. No, there's nothing to look at in that respect. But hey, I'm going for it. You should go for it. And it's for your health. And and an encouragement to others to do so. But if let's say you're physically exercising and you've got a tremendous physique, well, be careful not to go showing that off when you're out and about. That's the thing. Don't be boastful about it in your behavior, in your attitude. And as far as your heart, just before you do it, commit it to the Lord. And when you're done, commit it to the Lord. And that should be a good safeguard. Let's see. Brett, other than pre-trib eschatology, what very deeply held belief that you had has changed due to your biblical and other in-depth studies? Well, I did become a Calvinist, but then stopped being a Calvinist. So that shifted back. I questioned premillennialism, but then embraced that historic premillennialism. I would say that my understanding of Israel massively fleshed out over the years, even though I was a Jewish believer, active in Jewish outreach all my life in the Lord, and studying rabbinic texts and doing my best to understand our traditions better because I wasn't raised in a traditional home. Understanding the importance of Israel's salvation, that light didn't go on until 1984. So that was 13 years in the Lord. Understanding Jewish roots of the faith better and the validity of Messianic Jewish expression, whereas when I first heard of it, I thought it was just crazy and heretical. I would say those are areas, but other things I believe fundamentally haven't changed. They've just been reinforced over these many decades. Christine, is it wrong to listen to a love song about a person, or should music only be used to glorify God? I'm not referring to music about sex and such. No, music is very powerful in many, many ways. And if there's a love song that gives you makes you feel especially closer to your fiance or your husband, or deepens an appreciation of a friendship, or just makes you celebrate the beauty of human love, it can be fine. It can be totally fine. Music serves many, many different purposes. Ultimately, music glorifies God and should be used for the glory of God, but within that subheading, there are many, many different ways it can be used. Electrical sawdust. Why does the Bible say it's wrong to sleep with your wife when she is having her period? Most obviously, it has to do with the sacredness of the blood. Just like the Israelites were to pour the blood out before cooking an animal and eating it. They were not to eat an animal with the blood in it. That was forbidden. There's something sacred about blood. And there's also kind of the shedding process that goes on may be considered a time of separation rather than procreation for the woman. Those seem to be the biggest reasons, the defiling nature of blood because of the sacredness of blood and life being in the blood, and this being a separated time for the woman because of that. Evie, do we have Christ's righteousness imputed on our account, or is actual righteousness, or both? We have imputed righteousness. We are declared righteous the moment we put our faith in God, and we are called to live righteously. So his righteousness is imputed to us, and we are now called to live righteous lives as those who are not condemned in God's sight. Cartoons. Do you believe that the world has been here for millions of years? What do you think of the theory the world has been here for? What do you think of the theory it's been here for 6,000 years? I don't know how long it's been here. I've had older Earth scientists on my show and young Earth scientists on my show, and I don't have the capability of confirming or refuting what they're saying. And the fact that the majority of scientists today may hold to a certain position is not definitive for me if there are enough qualified scientists with other views that are also strong. I don't know how long the earth is here, and I don't know that the Bible tells us. There are different ways of reading the opening chapters, Genesis 1 in particular, just in Hebrew, and understanding that and seeing its meaning in the rest of Scripture. So I do not know. Is it possible the earth is only 6,000 years old? I wouldn't say that at all. Is it possible human beings have been here 6,000 years? That would be a possibility. But it's also possible human beings have been here tens of thousands of years. Simply do not know. Blu-ray. I heard someone say only 1 in 4 Christians will go to heaven. Do you believe this is a valid estimation? So 1 in 4 people professing Christianity. It all depends where you are. In other words, in America, where 75% of the population professes to be Christian, and not that long ago it was 85%, but 75% profess to be Christian, would I say that 1 in 4 of them are truly saved? I don't know. That might be a good estimate. You go to a country where to be a Christian will cost you your life. Is it 3 in 4 that are really Christian there, or 9 in 10? See, that we don't know. In the Messianic Jewish community, Jews who believe in Jesus, what percentage of them are truly saved? Well, the vast, vast majority, because you're breaking away from your faith and you have to come into a brand new and real encounter with God, etc. Former Muslims who are now professing Christianity, what percentage of them are truly saved? Probably very high. Same with former Hindus. Now, if you take it down generations, you're born into it, then your kids are born into it, grandkids born into it, great-grandkids, sometimes you have a dissipation. It just becomes more cultural. But to say worldwide, who can make that statement? There's no way to make a precise statement like that. Bad Racket, do you believe it is possible that the Pope could be the Antichrist? If not, who do you think it will be? I don't know who the Antichrist will be. I don't know if the Antichrist will be a religious figure within the church that's apostate. I don't know if the Antichrist will be a Jewish rabbi or a Muslim imam or a secular atheist. I do not know. I do not see sufficient evidence in Scripture to point me in any definitive direction. So could a future pope be the Antichrist? Theoretically. It's like a future evangelist, Protestant evangelist could potentially be the Antichrist. Any of these scenarios are possible. You're talking about someone that claims to be a believer but really isn't and deceives others. The reformers thought that the Pope was the Antichrist. But can we make a scriptural case for that? No. Debzier, was it the same Abimelech in the days of Abraham and Isaac who tried to take Sarah and later Rebekah? No, just similar names. That would be the understanding. Similar names of a couple of kings in different places. I was just going through that in Genesis the other day. Let's see. Guys are scrolling, looking for your questions. Okay, let's see. Brett, I'm convinced that Torah is best translated as instruction instead of law, since instruction conveys both the idea of teaching command like Torah does. Your take. I know I answered this exact question not that long ago. It more fundamentally means instruction, but sometimes it is authoritative instruction, in which case law can be a right translation. That's why the Septuagint translated Torah with nomos, and that's why even in traditional Judaism, which emphasizes that Torah is not simply law, that's why in traditional Judaism, they'll talk about the written law and the oral law. So because it is God's authoritative instruction that you live like this, you must do this, you must do that, this is the Torah concerning this, concerning that, sometimes it means more than instruction. So fundamentally instruction, yes, but does it also have the nuance of law? In certain cases, yes. And instruction then, when it's God's with a capital I, this is the divine revelation, the divine teaching with authority. Mike, do you believe in city and regional transformation before the coming of the Lord? And should we put much strategy and focus on this, or mainly just focus on evangelism and discipling individuals? Both and. We absolutely need to constantly reach out and make disciples. But we also need to think holistically. Now, if you go back in past generations, people grew up in the same neighborhoods, lived and died there. Everybody knew everybody. You have revival break out in the community, it could easily go through that whole immediate region. Everybody in the apartment building, they've known each other for years and years and years. And now revival breaks out in some of the apartments, it could easily spread. When I was in the Faroe Islands a few years back, it struck me, a community like this, if revival really came down, it could affect the islands. Just that so many people living around the same isolated place that have known each other for generations, God begins to move, it could easily have that influence, that impact. It's harder now because people are much more isolated. It's easier for someone to just go through a culture and touch individuals here and there. But we should also think holistically. In other words, if God's really moving in your city, let's say you got 100,000 people in your city, and 10,000 people have really been converted, and 10,000 believers have really come back to life, there should be a result in that. There should be even more concerted effort to serve the hurting and the poor, more concerted effort to have a positive influence on the education system, more concerted effort to be salt and light with the real possibility of bringing about regional change. So I absolutely believe it could well happen, regional change, citywide change before the Lord returns. But on an ongoing basis, we make our first priority reaching the lost and making healthy disciples. Good Hope, thank you for your gift. To what extent did Yeshua take the curse and diseases on the cross, or did he just take the curse of the law since there's still sickness? He took the penalty of our sin on his own shoulders and died in our place. He did not become physically diseased, nor did he become sinful in his nature, but he took sin on himself. He took sickness on himself in a spiritual sense, in terms of taking the judgment of sin on him. Now, to the extent that we work that out in this world, we see forgiveness of sin, we see healing of sickness, we see deliverance from demons, but we still physically die. Until the physical resurrection takes place, we will not see total healing come. We receive forgiveness, but we don't totally overcome sin always in this world, because we are still in this world. So the price was fully paid on the cross. It's not fully realized yet in this world. Logos research. No, we started there. That's where we started. There we go. Okay. How can I develop empathy and become a more practically loving person? This is one of my main weak points. Take it from someone that had to grow in empathy. One thing is, every day, pray for it. Every day. Father, give me your heart. Sensitize my heart. Help me to really care about other people. Help me to really take an interest in other people. Pray over 1 Corinthians 13 and learn those verses well about true love, and say, Lord, may these be the qualities of my heart, and make me more like your son, Jesus, and help me to be vulnerable, and then be determined to take an interest. I remember years ago talking to a friend, and Nancy had been talking, this is going back decades, about, I seem very distracted when I'm talking to people because I'm looking over here or listening to that. I said, well, I am listening. She says, well, you got to let people know you're listening. So I was doing my best to engage my friend and kind of look him in the eye as he was talking and listen. And he was a very perceptive guy. And he said to Nancy, Mike's trying. In other words, you can tell he wants to care, but he's not quite there yet. But God sensitized my heart. Now, I can easily be distracted to this day, but when things are meaningful, you better believe I'm going to focus and hone in and make that person know their situation is important to me. But I still don't have the empathy, say, that my wife Nancy does, or that other compassionate people have. But I have a ton more than I used to. That's brought me to tears many, many, many times. So God will answer that prayer, and then you take what steps you know how to feel the pain, to get involved, and then God will develop it in you. Jupe. What is your opinion about Bill Johnson? Is he a false teacher or a good teacher? Bill Johnson, to the best of my knowledge, is a man of God who loves the Lord, loves the Word, wants to see people really know Jesus and be set free. He is not a false teacher, which would mean a hell-bound sinner, deceiver, introducing dangerous heresies. Do I agree with everything Bill would teach, every emphasis of Bethel? Certainly not. Do I believe that Bill is a man of God who loves the Lord, loves the Word, and has done a lot of good to help many people? Absolutely yes. If you want to know specifically what I believe on certain points where we might differ, then those are specific points to raise. Philo, I believe that the unborn are as valuable as other human beings, but why is it the penalty for an unborn being killed in Exodus less than that of an adult human? Actually, that's probably not what the text actually says in Exodus. It's most likely that it says that if, when two men fight, and one strikes the other and causes the children to be born prematurely, literally her children come out, that if there's no other harm, it's a premature birth, but the child survives, then there's just a fine for what's happened. But if there's damage, then eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. So there would be an equivalent penalty that if you caused a woman to miscarry and she lost her baby, that according to that reading of the text, there would be a death penalty. I would say, though, that in practice, that the baby in the womb is still a potential life, right? It is a living human being to be protected and guarded, but it has not yet survived pregnancy and come out of the womb. So it has its full viability once this is established outside of the womb. And Jewish law developed various categories in that regard. But obviously, life in the womb is sacred. Gregory, what's the sacred name of the God and how is it accurately pronounced? So the Hebrew letters Yud He Vav He, YHWH in English transliteration, most likely pronounced Yahweh, but we're not 100% sure. Most likely, though, but you can't be dogmatic on it. Beowulf, if you hold to the view that Nephilim are human angel hybrids, also if they are hybrids, could they, as descendants of Adam, be saved by the cross, or are they doomed from the womb? To the best of my knowledge, they are human angel hybrids. To the best of my knowledge, they are not savable because of that dual nature, to the best of my knowledge. And therefore, because they are not fully human, would be, quote, doomed from the womb. Israel, but it's an interesting question. Do people get immediately judged when they die? Is the final judgment, revelation, a second judgment from believers? They're not immediately judged when they die, but they're immediately separated at death. The righteous from the unrighteous, immediately upon death. They are separated. However, the judgment comes at the end, the final resurrection and the end. Andrew, I'm in a workplace where many people compare unvaccinated people to Jim Jones and heroes. How do I respond without taking either side since I'm not? It's very volatile. You want to be sympathetic to those who think that the unvaccinated are being irresponsible. You want to be sensitive to the unvaccinated who feel they are being responsible. I would say, hey, could you give me your take on this? In other words, bring them to a brilliant anti-vax person or show them some really serious studies that question the safety of the vaccine. And say, hey, what do you make of this? What do you think? You know, get them the highly educated people that are anything but Jim Jones followers drinking Kool-Aid. So isn't this interesting? Like, this guy helped develop mRNA. And yet he's got questions here. This guy was, former leader at Pfizer, and he's questions. Why do you think that is? What do they have to gain from doing that? Maybe just get them to think. And then if they won't think, say, isn't it kind of interesting? Like you seem critical of people who, after a lot of study and evaluation, won't get vaccinated, and you call them like cult-like. But aren't you acting like in a cult-like way when you won't even look at the evidence both ways? Just see if they will. Relax Fool. How long were the Israelites in Egypt? Some say 400 years and some say 200 years. The biblical text most naturally reads 400 years. Some have argued for a compressed time based on archaeological finds that seem to fit that better. But starting in Genesis 15 and then accounts thereafter coming out of Egypt, 400 years would be the more accurate time frame. KM, 1 Corinthians 7, 26, 29, 31. It really does sound like Paul is talking about the imminent return of Christ, but I don't think that's correct. What is Paul really saying here? Thank you, Dr. Brown. He is saying that in light of the present crisis, which could have been persecution rising or other challenges, that it was best to be single. And that, hey, if you're not married now, you're going to find it a lot easier without a wife and kids to fend for yourself in the times that are coming. But certainly the expectation of the closeness of the return of the Lord. I don't think in Paul's mind that he was saying, hey, 2,000 years out, we'll still be waiting for the Lord's return, or 1,950 years out. So in light of that sense of nearness, you're in this world, but you're not of it. And he's really challenging them to live in that way. But we also know that he gives warnings to Timothy about the difficult times they're living in, understanding, hey, I'm leaving and you're still going to be here. And same with Peter. Hey, people are going to scoff and mock. And Jesus talked about the king delaying his return, or the ruler, the landowner delaying his return, and people thinking he's never coming back. So this is all anticipated already in the New Testament, but there is that sense of imminency that's certainly there. Christian Rebel, what are your thoughts on the 1 John 5:7 debate? There is no debate. 1 John 5:7 is not in the Greek New Testament. Simple. To me, there's no debate whatsoever. End of subject. I think we're... all right. Hey, friends, have you gone to vitaminmission.com? Have you gone over there? Make sure you tune into my Friday broadcast, because I'm going to be bringing Dr. Mark Stengler on, and he's going to answer your health questions. Yeah, ask Dr. Stengler on Friday. I'm going to ask him some questions about being a naturopathic doctor and the healthy supplements and why that's better than just combating disease with, fighting the symptoms, try to deal with the root causes and bring healing in a more holistic way. But if you haven't gone to Vitamin Mission, you want to go for 3 reasons, okay? Number 1 reason is they are tremendously healthy supplements there. The way they're produced, the ingredients, there's a tremendous amount of science that goes into it, be it sleep supplements, be it immune system supplements, be it multivitamins, be it things for your digestive system, be it a wide range of other energy related. So great science behind it and the highest level of production. So check out the products there, vitaminmission.com. That's the first reason you want to go. The second reason is that you get a 10% discount. Use Dr. Brown, Dr. Brown. Use Dr. Brown when you go, and you get a 10% discount on all purchases as a special benefit of being a Dr. Brown listener or a viewer. And then thirdly, Dr. Stengler takes every sale that comes in through that site with that code and turns around and makes a donation back to our ministry. So healthy supplements, a discount, and a donation to our ministry all at the same time. So go there, but tell all your friends. Spread it to your family. The more the merrier. Don't keep the secret to yourself. All right, another question or two and we're done. Ethan, is it possible Revelation 6 is pre-trib happening now, also considering Revelation 13 is when Antichrist is talked about? Yeah, Revelation 6 is not happening yet. We're nowhere near it. We're what could be like a prelude to what it's going to look like. But no, my understanding of what's going to unfold in Revelation 6 is so much more intense. No, wouldn't even compare it. George, where did Jesus go after he resurrected? Why did he ascend to the sky? So the very first thing is the ascension, right? And Hebrews tells us that he purifies the heavenly things with his own blood, because remember, Satan fell and was cast out of heaven. But then he certainly descends to the netherworld. And he, in the netherworld, he declares his who he is. So does he go to the netherworld first, declare who he is to the powers of darkness, and say, I am he, it is finished? Does he then ascend to heaven and then come back and pick up his body? The order of things is debated. The Bible only takes us behind the scenes to a certain extent. And hey, who even knows if we could fully understand what the Bible describes? Hey, friends, thanks for being a part of our ministry. Again, a great way to support us and be blessed yourself is to go to vitaminmission.com. Check out some of the supplements, subscribe to them on a monthly basis. And I think it'll be a good benefit to you health-wise. God bless.